Welcome, everyone. This is Out of the Gloom, the Shaman Wood podcast. I'm Bill Skaronsky. You can call me Puddles. That's my partner, John Kreis. He's Doghouse. And our third man this week is Robert Sanchez, better known in F3 circles as Spit Valve. Welcome, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Spit Valve, how are you?
Not too bad. I understand you did a little running this morning. I wasn't able to get out there, but I did get to ruck, so that was fun. That was
Good,
fun.
good. And Doghouse, I understand you are, as it seems like every week, joining us from a different part of the country. Why don't you tell everybody where you are this week?
Dallas, Texas, down well, Arlington, technically, but yeah, down in Dallas, Texas for the weekend for a getaway with Booger and my uncle Goldwing.
Yeah. Have you talked to Booger more about getting his butt back out to the gloom?
Yeah,
Or is that
I'm,
just
I'm
beating a dead horse at this point?
no, it's a slippery slope. I try not to push too hard to the point that he resents it, right?
Yeah,
Because every man's got to go for his own reasons, I think.
that's true.
Um, I'm working on him, trying not to beat him over the head with it, but
Yeah.
if anybody out there listening has ideas how to motivate a 19-year-old to come work out, I am f3doghouse@gmail.com.
I don't know. He showed up. I heard one time to the wood for a black diamond, not realizing it was a black diamond, and he stuck around. So
Yeah,
whoever those guys were, maybe those are the guys you want to call because that's
maybe.
Yeah, it was sparklers. Um, yeah, that's a funny story. Might as
yeah. I
well
think
share it
Mind
since
to
we're out
tell.
here.
I think
He,
I think I think Sparkler can convince just about anyone to do anything. So
yeah,
With
Sparkler
that,
played the mind games for sure.
yeah, we'll come back to exactly that story in a couple of minutes. But as a reminder, F3, that's what we'll be talking about today, stands for Fitness, Fellowship, and Faith. If you would like to learn more, if you're not already involved in F3, you can learn more about F3 at f3nation.com, f3shamanwood.com. That's our local region here, and f3plainfield.com, which is where Spitball's joining us from. So lots of places to learn about what we're doing here, what we're building, what we're a part of, and what, if you're not already in the gloom, what you should become part of very soon. Before we jump too far into the first, second, and third F, Doghouse, why don't you share the F3 core values, mission, and credo as you do?
Gladly. So one, we're open to all men.
Huh?
Two, we are free of charge. Three, we are held outside, rain, shine, heat, or cold. Four, we are pure led in a rotating fashion. And five, we always end in a circle of trust.
All right.
We
I'm
have the
just used to
mission statement.
chopping my feet when we do this. Sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, perfect. We're gonna incorporate that moving forward. I like that.
We've got to do one of these where we're actually doing a workout or a rock or something. We'll get there at some
We'll
point.
get there. That's a goal for us. That's awesome. F3 has a mission statement that is made up of a task and a purpose, and that mission statement is to plant, grow, and serve small workout groups for men for the invigoration of male community leadership.
All right.
I
And finally, we have a credo to leave no man behind, but leave no man where you find him.
Excellent.
I
Well, let's talk about where we've found each other this last week. I know, as Spit Valve mentioned, we usually run together on Sunday mornings. It's kind of an off the books run club, ruck club over at Hamel Woods behind Crispy Waffle in Shorewood on Route 59. And it's really awesome to see how that group has grown. It used to be just a couple guys rucking because they wanted some extra miles. Then, as the summer Sandlot
Mhm.
Challenge started, we've got more guys out running. Today we had six guys out running, and I believe four of us set a PR. So, Latte had never run as long as he ran today. He ran 6.4 miles, so that's his PR. Norm set his 10K PR by 4 minutes, I think. Something ridiculous like that.
Wow.
Um, and Six Sheets and I both set our 5 mile PR. And it's funny because we were obviously all setting records, and then there's Picasso and Sparkler, the two best
Hmm.
runners. We're just out there like leading everybody. As you said, Sparkler can make anybody do anything, and he definitely got the best out of everybody today. So that was my workout of the week. I really enjoyed that running opportunity this morning. What about you, Doghouse?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Glad to hear you guys are pushing the boundaries there. So
Hmm.
my workout of the week is kind of an easy one because I only did one. Not proud of it, but here we are. But it is definitely worthy of workout of the week, and that's Underdogs VQ at the Island on Monday. So, Underdogs, one of our newer guys, he came out, I think, just 2 months ago. I'm not sure he's even hit 43 yet. I think he's close, but yeah, he jumped on. So shout out to Underdog for stepping forward and giving back and leading. He set up a Dora workout, but with an interesting little twist on this one. So, Dora exercises, for those who aren't familiar, I don't know what the acronym stands for, but basically you partner up. One partner completes a certain exercise, which let's say it's, for example, Merkins or push-ups, um, while the other partner runs to a certain spot and runs back and then relieves the partner and they switch. The key to the door is that you're combining your reps to get to a certain number. So it might be you might have 100 push-ups. So I might do 20 push-ups and the time puddle runs to the tree and back, and then he relieves me and so on and so forth. Typically it's just running though. So we had an interesting twist on this one that we were skipping. And as stupid as it sounds, it really doubles or triples the
That's a
effort.
burner. That's a burner.
It's a burner.
It's interesting.
It is a much harder method of transport. And I think he just kind of threw it in there as just like a last minute thing he said, and just said, hey, let's try something different. And made a big difference. So shout out to Underdog on your VQ and get back on the Q sheet.
So two things I just want to mention there really quick. I heard somebody say, I think it was Plankton, asked the other day, do you have to wait until your 43rd post to VQ? So he had heard that somewhere, like you can't queue until you've hit 43. And obviously that's not true. We told him, no,
Right.
you can queue anytime you're ready. Obviously, you want to be ready, you want to be prepared for it, but you don't have to wait. And that's awesome to see that Underdog is already taken that step.
Yeah. I think like a lot of things in F3, 43 is kind of a guidance. It's not a rule, right? I mean, we really only have 5 rules technically from the way I see it, and anything else is kind of open interpretation. But yeah, general guidance, I think around the time you hit 43 is when guys are usually comfortable enough or ready.
I think usually what I heard was if you hit 43 posts as a participant, usually somebody starts nudging you forward and saying, it's probably time you start thinking about queuing your first workout. Like
Well, yeah, that's the first milestone, really. So, that's the first time you're going to get noticed. So at that point, that makes sense, especially if it happens relatively quickly, I would imagine too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the Dora. I've heard two things on this. One, it's an acronym, do only reps assigned. So if I do 75, you only have to do 25 to hit 100. And I've also heard it's a reference to Dora the Explorer. Like one guy does the workout, the other one goes on an adventure, and then comes back. I have no idea which it is. Maybe it's neither. Maybe it doesn't actually mean anything. But
we've
an example of all the language
somehow,
we have, but who knows what it means.
I've heard that we as a region or Plainfield Chamonwood have managed to take the exercise we call the Bernie Sanders, which is basically just a backwards run, was originally called the Deion Sanders.
Oh, really?
That's how
Okay, yeah.
Because it makes a little more sense as a cornerback. He's running backwards, right?
Yeah. Huh.
Somehow I think we conflated that. So there's a lot of lore. I think both can be true.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think we do tend to rename things locally. Like we call the Michael Phelps the Miatas.
I don't know though, because I saw on the F3 Exicon there's an exercise called the Elizabeth Warren, which is Bernie Sanders done as an Indian run.
Huh. Interesting. So it's probably
awesome.
Without diving into politics, you can figure that one out for yourself. So,
well, Spitball, what was your favorite workout of the week this past week?
I've been real run heavy, obviously, with the summer sandlot because I can EC, 3 or so miles before and then get another 3.5 or 4 in at the run club. But trying to think what I did. I queued up a workout on Friday, but there wasn't a lot of guys out in the gloom in Plainfield on Friday. Honestly, it was probably a Chamonwood one this week because obviously, as you know, I come down, join you guys, particularly at the Wood, and I enjoyed our EC puddles that you and I did with Rooney because he pushed us a bit, and it wasn't a ton, but it was probably about a minute and a half per mile faster than I might have done that on if it was just you and I or just by myself. But it wasn't so fast that I felt super burned out. And then we did the slingshot run, the 1.5 miles, and again, sometimes when you do those slingshot runs, and for those of you that don't know what that is, the group lines up in a straight line, and whoever's in the front of the line makes the pace, and the guy at the back of the line has to sprint up to the front of the line. And so you end up running at a fairly decent pace as a group, and then you're doing these short sprints. And sometimes when we do those runs, especially with certain guys in Plainfield, it's like they're going to do what they're going to do in terms of pace. So
Hmm.
for somebody like me, and I
Mhm.
know you guys can probably relate to this to a point, I'll get burned out really quickly trying to do a sub 9, even faster sometimes pace. But I felt like Rooney and the guys that were with us kind of kept it around 9.5 ish, which is still fast for me, but it's not impossible, especially for a mile and a half. And so, as a result, if I ran an outright mile and only a mile, I could run a sub 9 minute mile. But because I'm usually doing it in the context of a workout, I PR'd my mile a 9:15, which in the
Hmm.
context of a longer run is very good for me. And
Hmm.
so I enjoyed that. But again, what I enjoyed about that slingshot run was that the guys didn't overburn the general pace. Because then what happens is you get a slower guy in front and the whole thing slows down, and then the guys that like to go
Mhm.
faster get pissed, and then they burn it. No,
Hmm.
it kind of hung around that same 9.5 or so minute pace the entire time. So that was good. And then I enjoyed. I think I surprised Picasso a little bit when we were doing the sprints. I don't go all out sprint because I don't train for it and I don't want to hurt myself. But I kind of pointed at him. I'm like, "Let's go." So we
Hmm.
lined up, and he kind of jumped out with I would say, a fast jog, and I'm slow to accelerate, but I have a decent top speed. I can't sustain it, and all of a sudden I could see him to my left, like, oh crap, and like kind of turned it on.
Yeah.
Again, he ended up going by me because I couldn't sustain it, but we hung together for a little bit, and he actually sent a message to Sparkler, who was site queue, and he's like, "Don't let Spit Valve fool you. He's pretty fast." For about 20 yards, but it was kind of funny because he did react to that, like, oh, okay. And of course, we all know he's probably one of our better, general, both for speed and distance runners that we have in our midst.
You're
So
here
that
for a
was
good
that was
time, not a long time, right?
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah, well, you know what? All it takes is 20 seconds sometimes.
I wanted to ask you, in particular, coming from the Plainfield region, what your favorite AO is. We have this AO spotlight every week. We've talked about some of the AOs in Plainfield, but certainly not all of them. I know you've got site key responsibilities. You're doing a lot of running out there. But what would you say is your favorite AO in F3 Plainfield?
Well, I don't know about in Shermanwood, but in Plainfield, a lot of us kind of have what we call home AOs.
Hmm.
And for me, that's the Coliseum. It's where I first posted. It's not it's pretty equal between there and the Raven's Nest in terms of distance, but the Raven's Nest is on Wednesdays, and there's a ruck and a run option on Wednesday, so I don't get out to Raven a lot. Um, I don't know if I would call it my favorite, but I think for me the most interesting AO in Plainfield is the DMZ.
Hmm.
And I kind of say that for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you're a Shamanwood guy, you probably don't get up there a ton, if at all, just because it's like me going to the island. I've never been to the island, so because it's just so far for me. But the DMZ has all those different athletic fields. It's got a turf football field, it's got basketball courts, it's got hockey, it's got skating,
Hmm.
baseball. So, and some guys, Corner Kick did a cool hockey one. I did a sports one, and then plus there's a big loop. It's like 1.8 mile, almost 2 mile loop that goes around it for running. So it's good for EC. And it just kind of has all the only thing it doesn't have is a hill, which I'm totally okay with because I don't like hills. Um, I guess if you want everything I just mentioned with a hill, um, I don't know, maybe go up to Black Panther and Outlands. I think they have a hill
Oh
there
yeah.
and all the other things. But yeah, I would, the thing about Plainfield AOs is they've all kind of got a hook to them, which is kind of nice. The Raven's Nest is kind of out there in the middle of nowhere. It's got a decent lot. And there's a few different unique things. The Coliseum kind of has Bot Park. It's centrally located amongst all the trails. The Ridge kind of has a little bit of all the things. It's got the hill, DMZ I just talked about. I mean, even the silos got some interesting trails. So, in terms of the three regions that or four regions, I guess now with Outlands that I've kind of primarily dipped my toe in. Granted, I haven't done a ton of Naperville or Outlands. Plainfield's got some nice diversity in terms of the AOs that I do enjoy.
I like the Coliseum as well. I think this is actually an F3 Plainfield Coliseum shirt. That was my
Mm,
first, that was where my VQ was. Even though I started down here and what Chamonwood didn't exist at the time, the
Right.
Coliseum was my first Q. So they'll always hold a special place in my heart too. And I just love Bob Park. There's so much for the kids to do. The community center's right there. It's a really cool spot.
My daughter, just a side note, my daughter went to the preschool
Mhm.
that's there. It's called Great Adventures Preschool, but she called it Avengers School. So we still refer to it as the Avengers. Well, we did, but before I called it the Coliseum. But when I want to tell her where I'm going, oh, the Avengers Park.
It's awesome.
that's awesome.
Yeah, kids come up with their own names for things. I think
Oh yeah.
my daughter calls what we call the Wood, which is Four Seasons Park in Shorewood. She calls that the Green Park because there's some green piece of equipment that she likes to play on. But they've got a different name for every park that we go to. There's the Forest Park. Everything seems to have a made up name, just like we do, I guess.
Hmm.
Well, let's jump into the Q&A spotlight. We want to give the PAX in really both regions an opportunity to get to know the men a little bit better, and that's one of the reasons that we have Spit Valve here as the third man today. So we've got a set of questions that we'll go in that direction, and then towards the end we'll somewhat open it up to talking about things that you're particularly passionate about, Spit Valve, and we'll let you go a bit from there. But first, let's have Doghouse take the first couple of questions there, a bit more about your background and how your F3 journey started. So I'll give it to Spit to Doghouse here.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, of course. So right off the top, when and how did you find F3?
So I had been tracking it online for a few years. I knew Toby. My kids
Mhm.
go to school with his kids. My son's in his daughter's class. But at that time, right around 2020, when we were all sitting doing too much internet, my wife was doing a lot of early morning stuff, and then obviously during COVID, she's in healthcare, so that was kind of hard for me to do anything. But she kind of faded a little bit on her early morning stuff. She likes to pay money for hers, so it's not FIA. She's not in FIA. Um, and I was having a chat with Bob Vila, and I was actually trying to help her find a new early morning opportunity. And Bob Vila's response to me was, "Well, why don't we take care of the leader of the house first?" And so
Mhm.
I said okay, and I went to the Coliseum on May the 1st of 2024 for a ruck club, and the Worm was on cue.
Oh
And
boy.
Bob Vila was like, "Yeah, it'll be the Worm, so it's not that hard." But it also wasn't really a ruck. We did stations with our ruck on, and at that time, my ruck was a camping pack with metal free weights in it. So every time I did like a big boy or something like that, I would get whacked in the head with free weights.
Wow.
So and then yeah, so then I've been doing it ever since, and obviously I got my nickname from that situation.
Awesome. So, what is your post count today? Do you have to know?
Let's see.
No cheating.
No cheating. Well, I
Nah, I
looked it
got
up. I
cheating.
looked it up before the podcast here. So
Yeah.
it's 287. That's the exact count. So I guess 300 is
Okay.
coming up. And I did a very, very large, there's some event that we do November, December that just like I ended up with like almost 100 posts in 6 weeks, which is which is which is not quite that much.
I
Maybe
think we've
80
talked about
posts.
reindeer games.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
Doghouse
I know.
knows
I'm
about
just I know.
the
I'm
games.
just it's kind of a taboo phrase in my house as it might be with
Oh,
some packs.
I
Um
Mhm.
we have to come up with a plan for it according to my wife, so for this next year. But that really
fair.
accelerated my post count because I did my 100th post like the last week of October in 24. And then I think my
Oh, wow.
200th post was like in February. So it came pretty quick. But um, I'm a site queue on Saturday morning, so I've always got that one, and then I do have availability to go to evenings on occasion. Usually end up hitting one of those a week. We've got obviously the 2 nights at El Coyote, and then there's the 2 nights down there at Three Rivers. So as you know, I probably try to get down to Three Rivers at least once a month for the evening, and probably
Yeah.
twice a month for El Coyote, maybe 3 times on occasion. And during the Sandlot Challenge, I try to hit at least one run club because again, you can EC and then get 3 or 4 miles during. Uh, this week I'll probably get 2 run clubs. I'll probably get tomorrow at the Coliseum and Friday at the Olympiad. And then I like to try to hit a ruck if I can, and then another regular workout or two. So, if it was up to me, if I didn't have 2.0 responsibility, stuff like that, I'd probably go out 5 days a week, get one rest day in there, probably
Yeah.
double tap at least once of those. I'm doing the early 4:15 one on Thursday, so I'll probably double tap on Thursday.
Nice.
Um,
Okay.
well, or I'll EC after instead of before. That'll be anything. So that's kind of the cadence that I do. So I would say I'll probably hit my 300th at the very beginning 2 weeks from now. I think I got a Monday queue. Maybe I'll try to make that it.
Awesome. So, tell us, please, if you would, how you got your F3 name.
So Duffman, uh, shout out to Duffman. He's one of the guys over at Go Brewing up there in Naperville. If you like the NA stuff, he was the
Mhm.
site Q at the Coliseum for that Wednesday. And so at the time, and I still am a second-degree black belt in Taekwondo, but I was like right in the heat of that part of my life where I was really into that. And I've since backed off a bit because for things that we'll talk about later on in the podcast, good things. But so it was between that part of me, the martial arts side of me, and the musician or the music teacher side of me in terms of what inspired a nickname. And so Ralph
Mhm.
Macchio was being bandied about as an option, and of course that's too cool.
Yeah.
And then finally, I think Duffman shouted out Spit Valve, and that's what stuck. And I never disliked it, but as you guys know from doing this long enough, it kind of just you take it on, it becomes a part of who you are in the activity. The funny thing is, I don't play a brass instrument, which is the kind of instrument that actually has a spit valve. I play woodwinds, so there's spit is not really something that we talk about, but it is a kind of dirty-ish musician term. There are far worse things. My last name is Sanchez, so there's far worse things I could have been named.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think
Thank
you got off relatively easy there.
you. Sure did.
Um,
um,
but we always say the man makes the name, so you're all good.
Hmm.
yeah,
All right.
Depends likes to call me Spitty V. So I've actually started using that as a handle for like online things. Like I play on chess.com and I use Spitty V as my handle because no one uses it for anything. So it's always available.
Yeah, that'd be a good like rap name or artist name, yeah. Your whole
Spitty
identity.
V.
It's awesome. Spitty V.
I am so
Cool. So,
podcasting.
so my
So,
last question for you. What's your typical posting cadence? I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but if you to revisit maybe.
Yeah, so the short answer is somewhere on the order of 5 times a week. It'll definitely hit five if I go two a day, and obviously the two a day can come in the form of a morning evening or two in the
Hmm.
morning. I don't typically like doing the double on Saturdays as often as I did when I first started doing F3, in part because when I first started doing F3, I wasn't ECing before that Saturday. I wasn't running before it, but now I typically am. So that's kind of like a double tap physically for me. But like I said, I'll typically do the Saturday morning, typically try to get maybe one evening in and 2 or 3 mornings, depending on what I'm able to negotiate at home.
are you
Awesome.
enjoying running more? Is that becoming one of your favorite types of workouts?
Um, I think running is one of those things that you don't love, but you don't dislike, but you feel like that if you want to do it, you have to keep doing it.
Hmm.
Um, I think I will enjoy it more when I get to the point where I can And this kind of my one of my goals is to be able to do the EC 440 with the general crowd that does that. I can probably hang with that group close at this point, but I can't chat while I do it, and that's kind of part of it, I think. Um, I like the sense of accomplishment that I get from running, and I like not messing up my shoulder, which coupons tend to do.
Mm.
So, and I do have enough discipline to run on my own on occasion too. So, do I love it? I don't know. Ask me that in like 6 months.
Oh, well, I will, but right now, that's a great segue into what I will ask you, which is, what do you love? What are you super passionate about that you'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about today? We've talked about a handful of things just because we
Sure.
work out so much together, but I'm curious what you want to talk about today.
Well, I think that when you become a person of our age, and we're all, the average age of guys in F3 is probably mid 40s, and that's a transition period in the lives of a lot of men. I think that that's when we really figure out that we're no longer young men,
Mm,
and a lot of us, our kids are starting to get to you know preteen years. I mean, they're not babies anymore for a lot of them. Some of us have younger kids still at that age, or maybe we're on a second marriage with younger kids or something like that. But we're starting to really know what parenthood is like, and we're in the
mhm.
middle of our careers, so we're kind of at the midpoint of everything, and so that can be tough. And it's, I think, in my opinion, a very overlooked time in terms of the types of supports, the types of things that are available. And F3 is certainly something that kind of fits that niche. I know it's not designed just for that niche, but you look around in our area, and that's what you see. You see a lot of guys, I would say between mid 30s and mid 50s is the primary demographic. And the problem that I have with other stuff that's targeted at that demographic is it's either very specific, like financial or specific career, or it's about things like families breaking up, you know, going through divorce or stuff like that. And so, and unfortunately, with a lot of that content, it can be very disparaging of other groups of people. And so, what I've kind of become very passionate about is the idea of serving men like the ones in our community, but doing it in a way that's a little bit more general, a little bit more uplifting.
Mm,
And I kind of, when I was really heavily involved in Taekwondo, they put you in rings based on age and gender, and there's no confusion about either of those things, which is good. And so when I eventually just kind of decided to hang it up for a bit, though, before that I was in a ring with 40 to 49-year-old men, and it was a very similar camaraderie that we experience in F3, but everybody's from around the country, or at least not in your own backyard. You're not going to see them every week. You might see them once a month at a tournament or at a seminar or something like that if they're local, or a couple times a year if they're national. So it's, you have like the texting and the messaging and occasionally, but you don't see them. You're not, the bond is formed the same way. Doing hard things together and being competitive is what men do, but you don't see them
These are
every
guys
day.
you're competing against?
These are guys I'm competing against. Yes.
Really? Okay. So you're communicating with them in between events
Oh
and
yeah, we help each
competing
other
with
out.
them.
I helped
Interesting.
the, I helped the guy beat me one time. I really did. But you know what? It's
Could you imagine that doghouse? Like talking to a guy you're playing basketball with and like I suck going to my left. Just
but it's
taking
different
him
though,
away.
because I think the thing I like about running is the thing that I liked about that, which is why running has kind of replaced it. Because first and foremost, martial arts was more of a you versus you. I know that people associate it more with the versus
Yeah,
hand
like
to
the
hand,
combo.
but
Yeah.
but that was only really two ish, and I say ish because one of them was foam stick fighting, beating each other with a stick, which is super fun because it doesn't hurt and people are really good at it. And then the other one is the more traditional sparring that you would think, and we've got a lot of gear on. But the other six events are all individual
Hmm.
events where you were judged on a criteria, and
Really?
and so just like anything, it is more you versus you. Can I do better than I did the last time personally? Because if you, and this is having been in music education, I've done competitive marching band as well. And one of the things that I would tell my students is if you judge your value based on a subjective opinion, even if it's a professional one, even if that person has been brought in to give that opinion, um, and then at the end of the day, that person disagrees or sees it differently than you, does that mean what you've done is now of lesser value?
Mm,
And so if I had something to offer my competitors, that probably meant they had something to offer me. But it's when men we were all dads. That was really first and foremost. We're all dads. Most of our kids were doing
Mhm.
it. And as we kind of joked before we would punch each other, we all had to go to work on Monday morning. So please don't knock any teeth out or anything like that.
mhm, mhm,
So yeah, it was competitive in that way. Are there guys that took it too far? Sure, but those are the guys that are standing at the other side of the ring by themselves when the rest of us are standing, you know, standing around chatting, waiting for our turn.
mhm,
And so I think anybody in F3, especially in our area, would recognize that that vibe, even if they had never been a part of any kind of martial arts or something like that before.
mhm. So that is a part of your background, it's part that you've carried forward into some of the things that you're doing today to help men as well. Why don't you talk a bit about the speaking that you're doing and some of the training that you're doing to help other men who are struggling with this thing that a lot of us don't do very often, which is speaking in a very effective, very, I wouldn't say professional, but certainly effective way.
Well, when you look at F3, and obviously the people that are going to watch this podcast are going to be uh, primarily F3, but certainly this
Mhm.
is and should be an advertisement for those that aren't. You can think about our circle of trust, our COT, and guys approach that in many different ways. But I know for a fact that there are guys that don't queue as much as they should because they are apprehensive about the idea of doing a COT. And maybe the problem with that is there's no guidelines for the COT, just like there's no guidelines for queuing. And I think some guys think that they have to pour their hearts out, and some guys it takes a lot to do that, and that's good, that's fine. Um, but to me, just being men, I think we have to be able to speak with a certain gravitas, with a certain authority. We have to speak like leaders, particularly in our families, in our communities. Many of us are coaches. And then obviously my background being a teacher, I've had to do that, every day for 10 months every year for the last, well, more than 20 years. I'm 20 years into teaching, but I've been a teacher for longer than that. And a big part of doing that is you have to speak off the cuff. And I say that with a grain of salt because kind of like our podcast today, this is not scripted, but there is an outline. We
Sure.
kind of have a general idea of what the topics are that we're going to touch on. And that's most experienced teachers are going to approach their delivery of their lessons in that way. They're going to have a general outline of what they're going to do, but then the minute by minute, second by second delivery is pretty much off the cuff. And when you're in front of a group of second graders, man, they smell fear. They absolutely smell fear. And especially I teach at a higher needs school where the kids have a little bit more trouble with some emotional regulation. And those kids not only smell fear, but they smell fear while they're pretending they're on fire and throwing things across the room. So you have to, that's not an exaggeration, by the way. You
That was
have
last Tuesday.
On fire?
well, I mean, I've been off for the summer, but yeah, it was probably
Okay.
the last Tuesday of school. So
Mm,
you have to be able to do that, and I think that every man can benefit from that skill. Now, what's the real hook here? The real hook is this is an entry into helping men of our age sort of master themselves in a new kind of way. There's a lot of physical fitness content. There's a lot of managing relationships content. But at the core of all those things, it's being able to be confident. And one of the most key ways that I've found to be confident in my life is by standing in front of a group of people and speaking. To the
mm,
point where when I was teaching, when I didn't give a speech, my students would almost like refuse to take the field in performance until I said something. And so yeah, that's the angle that I'm playing into the men's space. And again, just want to reinforce the fact that it's about building men up. and not bringing anybody down, because I feel like most of the problems that we have in our world are maybe not the fault of men, but certainly strong men can change them
Well,
and
it's
bring those.
interesting. You started that from a position of why men are perhaps reluctant to queue, because there is this thing waiting for
Mhm.
them at the end that, yeah, depending on whether it's your VQ, as Doghouse mentioned with Underdog earlier, or you've queued 20 times as those of us have, it's still standing in front of a men that you in front of a group of men that you respect very much. And whether you choose the route of being extremely vulnerable in that moment, or you just pull a quote or a news story and talk about what's happening in the world, there is that moment where you've shared this experience of sweating and going through this physical workout, and you've shared that, you bring it back together, and now everybody's looking at you to deliver something to close the door, to close that experience up. And that is a lot of pressure. I think most men put quite a bit of prep into it. Either they've got notes on their phone or they've written something out in advance. I don't know. I'd love to hear your approach, Doghouse, and yours as well, Spit Valve, how you prepare a COT, if you found a way that works better for you, or if you just approach it differently every time. Doghouse, why don't you start? I'm curious to see how you approach. I've heard
Yeah.
some of your COTs, and I know sometimes they're very personal, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, it always depends on the workouts. Admittedly, I'm more off the top. I don't like to plan too much. I'll have a central idea I know I want to talk around. I think it comes off better when it comes from the heart, when it's off the cuff. I've had some I've kind of, it shouldn't read like a, all right, I'll give a different example. I've done two best man speeches in my life, and one was like scripted down to a T, and it sucked. And one of them was kind of just more off the cuff, reading the room, kind of I had a few bullet points I wanted to make, and it was much better. So I think I'm better off the cuff. I like to have an idea, and like I've said with workouts before, I like some of the best workouts I've partaken in are where the COT kind of comes out in the workout, and then you wrap it and kind of put a bow on it. So I try to bring that in as well. So mostly I'm off the cuff though.
What about you, Spit Valve? How do you approach your COTs?
Well, to be honest with you, the COT is one of the main reasons I queue, and I
That's for me
have,
too. I
yeah,
agree
I
with
have,
you.
I have a lot of queues, but there's a couple different ways I've done it. Sometimes I've done it like other people do, where I plan it along with the workout. And I'll be honest, I plan my workouts a lot less than I used to as well. I do a lot of pearls on a string these days because you can just kind of wing those to an extent. But I think the most important thing for me for a COT right now is to read the room and see who the group is that I'm with, and the AO matters for that, because there are a lot of guys that kind of stick to an AO. Especially up in Plainfield, there's a whole group that pretty much sticks to the ridge, and then they'll follow around
Hmm.
certain cues. Um, if I'm doing a Monday night in Shamanwood, that's a very different group of people than uh, Thursday morning at the Olympiad or something like that. I think the number of guys that are out also makes a difference, because I feel like when I'm speaking to a group of people, the larger the group of people, not necessarily the less personal it is, but if this sounds strange, it may be, the larger the group, the more narrow my focus will be.
Hmm.
Meaning, I
Right.
might try to appeal to the whole group if it's a group of five, but if it's a group of 20, I might try to appeal to just one person. And I'll give you an example of that. And it's not always on purpose, but there was a cue that I did at the Olympiad, probably close to the beginning. And there's a Pax that I haven't seen him in a long, long time. His name's West Side Story. And I think his wife had just lost her job. And I had been listening to some motivational speeches and stuff, and I quoted one of those, and it just happened to resonate with him in such a way, and he felt kind of empowered in that moment to support his wife. And he messaged me about that. And so it wasn't intentional, but for me, if I can, with a larger group, if I can sort of pinch something with one person, that's great. If it's a smaller group, I might try to address the group as a whole. But um, I might have three or four things in my head. Um, there's a lot of times when I won't even think about the COT until it's the COT.
Really, I've never
And
once done that. I've always gone in with some idea of what I want.
but there's enough things that I think about along those lines on a daily or weekly basis that I can usually pull something out meaningful. And there's even been times when I've said my COT today is to just go out into the world and do something. Go change the universe. Go make a dent in the universe. I think there's
But
a creator that says that.
and again a good way to lead into the last question of this section. When you're thinking about something that's meaningful, something that's impactful, I'm curious if you could put your finger on how F3 has been most impactful in your life over the last year and a half or so that you've been in it.
Well, as I kind of alluded to, I guess you could say it's kind of replaced martial arts. So before F3, I was taking martial arts class three or four times a week. I was going to a tournament a month, sometimes two. It was very expensive. That's another part of the reason why I don't do it to the extent that I used to. But as I talked about the sort of the brotherhood that you had in the ring, and to me, F3 has made me appreciate my community and the surrounding communities on a whole nother level. When I was teaching high school band, we had this convention that we would go to every year. It's called the Midwest Clinic. It was in downtown Chicago, used to be at the Hilton, and then it was moved over to McCormick. And you'd go every year and you'd see all these people that you went to college with, or that you were in college band with, or different educators from around the country that you knew. And I think I brought my wife with me one time because there was an event for with spouses, and she's like, "Oh, all these people. Is everywhere you look, you know somebody." F3 has almost kind of made it like just being around town is like that now. Like I saw Sparkler at Costco the other day, and you know earlier in the week I was driving in Joliet, and there's an F3 sticker on a truck, and I don't know who it was, but it was probably somebody I knew. Good chance. And just kind of
Always.
stuff like that. It makes the community smaller in a very good way. And people say that to new packs. They say, "Oh, the workout is just the lure," and really it's about the other parts of it. And that's absolutely true. And Bluegill, who's one of our, I guess you could kind of call him an OG because he's been around forever. He had a
Mhm.
good statement to me at one point. He said, once you start doing it and you get involved with it, even if you stop, you always know it's there. You always know, if you happen to wake up at 5:15 on a Tuesday morning, you know that there are guys most likely at such and such location doing a
Mhm.
workout, and you probably know some of those guys. And so it's so unique. The other thing that I think is very unique about, and I don't know if it's like this in all regions, but it's certainly like it in ours. Our leadership is, the guys that are sort of steering the ship right now. But in a few weeks in Plainfield, those however many guys there are, 7 or 8 guys, are gonna just meld right back into the membership
Mhm.
and just be regular guys. And new group of people are gonna go up
New
and be
group of regular
leaders.
guys.
Yeah, new group of regular guys are gonna go up and be the leaders.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then also kind of sitting around our groups are 5 or 6 other groups of guys that have done the exact same things. And I think there are very few venues where you can have people in official positions of leadership. They are appointed, they have or asked, they have responsibilities, they keep this thing going, but then there's no term to it as opposed to like a nonprofit board. But then they then kind of step down and go right back into the ranks again. It's almost like a general becomes a general, is a general for a year, and then goes back to being a major or something like that.
Mhm.
And it's not even that I don't see it anywhere. It's that if it were to happen in virtually any other leadership structure, it probably would not be a good thing.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're a leadership organization, but also a leaderless organization. Like we it doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't depend on any one person. And I think by design, that makes it more effective that any one of us on this call could be the Nantan in 3 years and then go right back, as you said, to be, you don't want it. It could
I'll do
go
something else. I don't want. I don't want
back.
to. I think Meta and Soft Hands, those guys, Picasso, they do a great job. But I see how much crap they take during reindeer games. So,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, reindeer games. All right,
This
well,
podcast does not count for points.
it doesn't, no points.
No,
really? Oh
no
shoot! I
points.
thought it was 10
Sorry.
points.
See, now that's a good point, though, Doghouse. If we made the podcast worth points, we wouldn't have to fill any slots for the entire fall or winter. Guys would
That's a
be
good point.
climbing over themselves. We'd have like 4 men on the show at one time. That'd be,
They have to be a panel.
Yeah, you
oh,
might want to. You might want to ponder that before
yeah,
you make that decision at some point.
that's not a bad idea. All right, Doghouse, why don't you bring us home with some things going on around the Shamanwood region, Spit Valve. I know there are a couple things going on in Plainfield. I'd love you to mention some events that are coming up in the next month or so as well.
Yeah, so first one here, we had to push back a little bit. We've got the CPR training is going to be Friday, July 25th now. So we're just moving it back one Friday. You'll get that pre-blast up soon. So be looking out for that if you're listening. Also, as you probably know, if you're listening, the podcast has been added to queue signups. Anyone who wants to get on the podcast can sign themselves up. Details are in the podcast channel in our Slack. Finally, we've got a couple of our summer parades coming up here in the next few weeks. We have the pre-blasts up for those as well as the sign-up sheet. We have Catfish Days on July 27th. We have Crossroads Festival Parade August 3rd. And finally, we have the Three Rivers Fest Parade Sunday, August 10th in Shanghai.
Awesome. And what are the two things going on in Plainfield, Spit Valve?
Well, I think the first thing, and this is mainly for the PAX, but also for the Shamanwood guys to know, is we do have an evening Q source now
Hmm.
at El Coyote on Tuesday nights at 7. Right now, it's just being held at the pavilion right there at the AO, but it'll get moved and probably pushed back a little bit once the weather gets cold. But there's a lot of guys, as you know, that are evening and weekend only,
Mhm.
and or even just can never get to the 7 o'clock, whatever time it's at, 6:30 Q source. So and it's not on the same schedule as our other Q source. In fact, I'm queuing it this Tuesday, and we're on the language, which is the second chapter that we work. So that's the first thing. The second thing is our convergence is on Saturday, August 2nd at the Raven's Nest. And just got the info from Belding and Broomstick on that, and we're gonna have SLT 6 being revealed. And we were of course speculating before the recording here on who some of those
Mhm.
guys might be. So that's always fun. I guess I'll learn over the years why it's done that way, and rather than it being kind of open. But I'm looking forward because I know those are going to be guys that I've been in the trenches with here, and probably a few guys that started just before me and so forth, which will be cool. And then on the 27th, I believe that's a Sunday of this month of July, we are having our 5th anniversary celebration over at the American Legion in Plainfield. And that's, I think, from 12 to 5. And that's M's are invited, and there'll be some food. And we're also running a donation drive for school supplies, since a number of our AOs are either on or near the site of schools like Troy and Lincoln Elementary over there at the Grove. So that's
Great.
what's happening in the Plainfield region of
Awesome.
of F3.
Yeah, excited to see that anniversary celebration. Excited to see the turnover of leadership every year. Like you said, it's guys that we've all been in the trenches with. It's a great opportunity to see them step forward. And that actually tees up my COT pretty nicely. I wanted to go back to the F3 mission. We talk about it, we state it at every single workout, but I don't think we focus enough on the back half of it. The F3 mission is to plant, grow, and serve small workout groups for men for the invigoration of male community leadership. Now, if you just cut that off at small workout groups for men, and I think a lot of us do, when somebody sees us wearing a shirt or sees a bumper sticker, hey, what's F3? Oh, it's a free workout group for men. If we just stop the conversation there, then we're no different than a free CrossFit, a gym, community run club. We're no different than just exercising together in a group of men. So that second part really, really matters for the invigoration of male community leadership. That's why we're doing this. The belief, of course, is you strengthen your body so that you can effectively live your life and you move from the first F to second F. You move through the quadrants of the Q source, taking care of your body so you can take care of others. You strengthen those relationships in your life, whether it's the relationships in your own home or in the gloom, but eventually in your community. We're all building towards the invigoration of male community leadership. So I'll close this by challenging everyone who's listening to this podcast to ask themselves, am I becoming an energetic or invigorated leader within my community? Whether that's in my home, in my children's school, in my neighborhood, am I becoming a leader within my community? Am I leading more than just workouts for the pecs? It's great to cue. Everybody should get on the cue sheet, but am I getting 1% better outside of the gloom? Or does F3 for me end with recover, recover? So I'll close it there. We can all sign off and we'll see everyone again next time. For now, I'm Bill Skoronsky, 46, and Puddles.
Puddles, John Price, 41, Doghouse.
House.
Ghosts. And Robert Sanchez, 43. Spit valve.
Spit
Spit
Valve.
Valve.
News.